Hey everyone, Bible Nerd here. Every Tuesday on my Facebook page, I post trivia questions. So I thought it'd be fun to go through and answer those questions after the day is over. See how many you get right, see how many you get wrong. Check out my Facebook page at Bible Nerd. Every day I post something different. So I have a different theme for each day. You can check out the content there as well. But love to have you be a part of the Facebook page along with the YouTube channel. So check out my video for today and answer the questions that were posted today on Facebook. Welcome to Trivia Tuesday, and question number one. I've got a new camera I'm playing with, so hopefully that'll look a little bit different, and kind of playing with the audio a little bit, just trying to make this a little better production. I've really learned a lot trying to put together a channel and a podcast and a merch store, and it's been just a lot of fun going through all this stuff and nerding out in all kinds of other ways. So hope you're enjoying what we're doing so far, and please like and share and comment, all those things. It just makes it a lot more fun to engage with other people in this process. So let's go through the first trivia question for today. What is the name of Abraham's first son? Was it A, Isaac, B, Ishmael, C, Jacob, or D, Esau? Give you a couple seconds here. Abraham's first son, Isaac, Ishmael, Jacob, or Esau? Let's go to Genesis chapter 16, and we're going to find our answer. I'm reading today out of the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible. I've got a couple other ones. I don't know if the camera is wide enough to see the ones back there. I got some on the shelf. I like looking at different versions, whether it's with the mobile apps or the physical copies, and all the different side notes and the different stuff that's in them. I just really enjoy nerding out on the Bible. What do you know? Hence the name of the channel. All right, let's go to Genesis chapter 16. And we're going to let's go to the 15th verse, and we'll give a little backstory. So the 15th verse reads this. So Hagar gave birth to Abram's son, and Abram named his son, who Hagar bore, Ishmael. So today's answer is B, Ishmael. Now, who's Hagar? Because Abram, or Abraham, as he's later turned his name into, was married to Sarai, or Sarah, as their names are changed, with the fulfilling of a promise that a lot of people, a lot of generations a lot of seed would come from these two people. They're really the father of really three major religions of the world, kind of came from the Abraham line. And this is part of that story of Abraham and Sarah trying to have children. And instead of waiting for God's timing, as they're getting older and older, the promise hasn't been fulfilled. Maybe they missed it, or maybe it wasn't supposed to be Sarah. I mean, who knows what's going through their heads. So they basically come up with kind of a scheme that Sarah says, okay, here's my servant girl, Hagar, have a child through her. So Abraham does it. It ends up causing a bunch of strife. It just gets screwed up. Sarah ends up resenting Hagar. Hagar kind of thinks that she's better than Sarah, and it just becomes this conflict to eventually where Abraham says, well, do what you will with her. Take care of it. Do it yourself. So Sarah just starts to abuse her, eventually to the point where Hagar decides to just leave. And God meets her where she is at and has her come back, and she ends up bearing the son. Later down the road, they do have another child, which is the promised child through Abraham and Sarah, that is Isaac. So kind of almost a little way to throw you off there by having one of the answers be Isaac. And of course, Jacob and Esau are the first sons of Isaac. So that's why I was trying to make sure these questions are a little tricky and make you think about it a little bit. So the answer to today's first question is B, Ishmael. You can read the full story in Genesis chapter 16. We'll give you a little more nuance on the name and how that all plays out. Let's move on to question number 2. All right, question number 2. This is a fun one. I really had fun kind of researching this one because honestly, I was like, I actually didn't remember the city. So the question is, in which city was Jesus baptized? Now, we know the river, we know the area, but what city? What city is that a part of? Was it A, Jerusalem, B, Nazareth, C, Bethany, or D, Capernaum? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. What city was Jesus baptized? Let's go to John chapter 1. Let's back up to the 26th verse. The answer is in 28, but I love reading this part of the baptized story, the baptismal story, because there's a phrase that John says all the time, like in all the Gospels, which I think is really fun. So let's go to verse 26 in John chapter 1. I baptize you with water, John answered them. Someone stands among you, but you do not know him. He is the one coming after me, whose sandal strap I'm not worthy to untie. I just think that's in all of them. It was a very common thing, and how much that John the Baptist was gaining popularity, how these people being known as a prophet, even the strength and authority of Elijah. I mean, he's gaining some traction with the people, and yet he always kind of says, Nope, there is someone coming after me that I can't even tie his shoes. I can't even unloosen his shoes. I'm not even worthy to do that. So he really was very good at de elevating himself and making sure he was elevating the right person, which was the Lamb of God. So let's keep reading the story. So, verse 28. All this happened in Bethany, across from the Jordan, where John was baptizing. The next day, John saw Jesus coming towards him and said, "Look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. This is the one I told you about. After me comes a man who ranks ahead of me because he existed before me." What a great story. But honestly, everybody, baptizing in the river, Jordan River, but I just didn't think about it. It was just a fun trivia question. I'm like, "Oh, what city was it?" It was Bethany. So the answer to today's question is C. Let's move on to question number 3. All right, on to question number 3. Hope you're having fun. Please, again, like, subscribe, comment, share. Love to engage with you on this stuff. I think it's really a fun way to do Bible study by having the trivia questions and just kind of going to where the answers are. So let's go to this one. You may know the answer to this one, but we'll have a little fun with it. How many plagues did Egypt experience before the Israelites were freed? Was it A, 5, B, 7, C, 10, or D, 12? This one might be more people might know this one, but we're going to have a little fun with what they are. So the answer is C, 10, the 10 plagues of Egypt. So let's go through each one of them. Do you remember what they are? Do you remember kind of why they're significant? So let's go through each of the 10 plagues real quickly and see if you can remember each one of them. The first one's a pretty big one. It turns all the water into blood. So even the water in pots in the river, the Nile, and the Egyptians really elevated the Nile River up to the status of a god. It was a big part of their culture. It was a big part of their commerce and their protection and water. And the Nile was a really big deal in Egypt to the point where it was elevated as a god. So as you look at these plagues, look at the gods that Egypt had attached to them, and yet this Yahweh, this God of the Israelites, had control over all of it because he is the actual true creator of the universe. He is the actual true God. So I like, if you look at each one of these, it's specifically targeting some of the gods that the Egyptians had elevated and how he brought them all low and had control over all those things. So let's go through each one of them. The first one was turning the water into blood. The next one is frogs. I mean, ugh. Imagine just your country or your palace and your room just covered in frogs. They were just everywhere. They're scooping them out, trying to get rid of all these frogs. The next one is either gnats or lice. I've seen some interpretations that it could be lice. Most of the time in most Bibles, I think it's regarded as gnats, just flying little insects all over the place. You just can't get around them. And then to follow that up, the next one is flies. So right after you have all the frogs, the lice, then all of a sudden you get a bunch of flies. It's like, wow. Then you have all this pestilence that happens to your livestock. So now all of a sudden your livestock, your commerce, your livelihood in a lot of ways is now threatened by a lot of livestock having pestilence. The next one's is boils. So now all the people start getting these boils, very uncomfortable sores and everything all over their bodies, on top of having to deal with all the things that were happening up to that point. It's just unbelievably nasty. The next one is a massive thunder hailstorm. So even control over the weather that just decimates the area and just destroys everything. And then after that, there's a swarm of locusts that come in and just devour everything else that's left. I mean, those things are just nuts when they come in these swarms and they just consume everything that's left over, all the grain and all that type of stuff, the grass, everything just gets gobbled up by this swarm of locusts. On top of dealing with the frogs and the flies and everything that dealt to it up to that point, on all these waves as they come and go with these plagues. The next big one is darkness. So over 3 days, it's complete darkness. Every translation I saw described it as a thick darkness for the full 3 days, which means no sun, no moon, no stars, complete covered in this thick darkness for 3 full days. Again, such a supernatural thing that's in control of even the heavens and the earth and the moon and the stars and everything that the Egyptians may have tried to worship. And of course, the last one is the death of the firstborn, other than the Israelites. And this is one of the rituals within the Israelite culture that still goes on to today. I don't know if there's anything else on the planet other than the actual Sabbath observance, which is every Sunday, that still does this Passover. I mean, it's centuries old, centuries and centuries old within that culture. It's just a beautiful thing of how much they go back to that and remember it and what happened and how they were saved from the angel of death that went through and killed the firstborn of everything, of all the people, all the livestock, all of them other than the Israelites, if they sacrificed a lamb and put the blood over the doorpost to signify they were part of that chosen people. And that's eventually when they finally decide to let them go. And even then, they chase them into the desert, and then we have the parting of the Red Sea. So even after all of that, Pharaoh still goes after them to try to bring him back. And that's where you have the parting of the Red Sea. But today's answer is C, which is 10. How many of those did you get right? When you went through kind of the 10, do you remember all the 10 plagues and just the significance of why I think they're in the order that they're in and what the message that was trying to be communicated, not only with the story to the Israelite people that would read this story, but also to everybody else to know that this is the one true God and that he has power over all of it and not just the God of something. He is the God of all of it. Let's move on to question number 4. All right, on to our final question of the day, number 4, and we're going to have a little fun with the Good Samaritan parable. I would say Good Samaritan, maybe Prodigal Son are the most known parables in and outside of the Christendom that people do realize or relate to. And I think there's such an important thing in the parables. I mean, these were designed to be stories to internalize answers, to memorize answers, to just make sure that the story could be retold because they didn't have pen and paper and recording devices and all this type of stuff. They had to kind of get the answers and turn them into parables. Very, very common as a way to memorize this stuff. So I think the Good Samaritan is really a fun one to go through and really dive into. So that's part of today's trivia question. Number 4 is this. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, who passed by the wounded man first? Was it A, a Samaritan, B, a Levite, C, a Pharisee, or D, a priest? So who was the first to pass by the wounded man? A Samaritan, a Levite, a Pharisee, or a priest? So let's go to Luke chapter 10, and we're going to read about the Good Samaritan. Luke chapter 10. We're going to start in the 25th verse, Luke chapter 10. And again, I'm out of the CSB edition. You might have a little different rendering, but it'll be pretty similar, I think. Verse 25. Then an expert of the law stood up to test him, being Jesus, saying, Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus answered, What is written in the law? How do you read it? He answered, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You've answered correctly, Jesus said. Do this, and you will live. But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, And who is my neighbor? So, quick point here: this love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. This was known as the Shema. They would say this prayer: the Lord is one, the Lord is God. Love your Lord with all that you have, with your resource, with your mind, with your heart, with your soul. The Bible Project has a great little breakdown of how this video or how the Shema kind of breaks down what those words meant. There's just some beautiful symmetry there, but it's also very interesting to see the words that are used wouldn't mean heart in today's day and age or soul. Those have been kind of changed to make sure we get the idea that you're supposed to love the Lord your God with all that you have, with your time, your resource, your mind, your heart, your soul. It's supposed to be an all kind of thing. So that's where Jesus says, you've answered correctly. Those are the two most important laws, is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So then he responds, well, who's my neighbor? So let's read the parable. Jesus took up the question and said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him bare, beat him, and fled, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to go down the road. When he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So the answer to today's trivia question is D. The first one that passed by was a priest. In the same way, a Levite, when he arrived at the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan on the journey came to him, and when he saw the man, he had compassion. He went over to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on olive oil and wine. Then he took him with his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took 2 denarii, which is not a small amount. It's definitely enough to cover anything that could be going wrong. And it's a big sacrifice for the Samaritan to just say, hey, here's money. If this doesn't cover it, I will take care of it when I come back. So he's saying, okay, here's enough money to cover it. This should cover it. And if it still doesn't cover it, I will still cover it to make sure this man is taken care of. Let's keep reading. He gave it to the innkeeper and said, take care of him. When I come back, I'll reimburse you for whatever extra you spend. Which of these 3 do you think proved to be the neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The gentleman answered, the questioner here, the expert in the law, said, the one who showed mercy to him. Then Jesus said, go and do the same. So it's pretty interesting to see. Now, what I like about this story is the Samaritans were not really friendly with the Jews. They were part of the northern tribes, and they felt that there was during some of the wars and conflicts that they kind of picked the wrong side. They're not looked at as part of the Israelite culture. They kind of abandoned the original Israelite culture. They were really looked down upon as an ugly stepchild within the family because of some of the history that happened up to that point. And so, even though they were technically Israelites through family blood, they were viewed as just kind of outsiders. So, for Jesus to use the Samaritans would have been scandalous right off the bat. Like, oh, the Samaritans wouldn't do anything for an Israelite or for this. They're bad people. They wouldn't do anything. So, right off the bat, he's picking the Samaritan on purpose to be able to show that, hey, the Levite and the priest should be the ones taking care of this guy. And because of ritual impurity, because of laws within the Levitical law, if they come upon blood or somebody almost dead and they touched or did anything with that, they could become ritually unclean and would have to not be able to do their priestly duties, wouldn't be able to go to the temple, wouldn't be able to do certain things. So they turn that law into an excuse to not show the compassion in the situation. So he's trying to turn that on its head, that you've taken some of those laws too far, that if you've got somebody that's hurt on the side of the road, help that person. Instead, they cross on the other side of the road. So that way, next week or the next day, he doesn't give us what day this was that these people were traveling, that they wouldn't have to miss out on some of the ritual stuff or Sabbaths or Passover or whatever else was coming up. The idea was, okay, if they went down and touched blood, they would have to be ritually unclean for a certain period of time. They'd have to wash and bathe and isolate themselves. There's a lot of stuff there. So not necessarily that that's a wrong thing, but he's trying to point out not only did the Samaritan do what the priests and the Levites should have done for this man, saved him, protected him, and done it. And he went way overboard. The Samaritan went even far enough to say, not only am I going to pour wine and bandage you and get you into the city, I'm also going to give money to make sure that you're taken care of. And if that doesn't take care of you, I'll come back and take care of even more. That's just above and beyond kind of thing. And I think that's what makes this story so beautiful, and how Jesus is really turning it on its head, that the two people that probably should have didn't. The one that showed the mercy is the one that is the neighbor in this story. So it's just a beautiful story. Not very long. Luke chapter 10, 25 through 37. So only those couple of verses, but been talked about through all centuries now. We've talked about this story and how Jesus is showing, regardless of social status, regardless of religious duty, regardless of what you've manipulated in the law to not touch blood, which you're not supposed to do, that's still something they would have had to do. So if the Levite did touch that almost dead body, there's blood, there's probably something going on there. You know, he's almost dead is what it says. He's beaten to an inch of his life. There's got to be blood all over the place. That the Levite would have had to make a sacrifice and had to wash and stay away and do those types of things to take care of this man. But they chose the ritual purity versus helping someone. And that's where Jesus is trying to say the neighbor would take care of those things, that God wants mercy over the other things that they've turned the things into. So I hope you had a lot of fun with it. That's the answer to number 4. And we'll see you next week on the next trivia day. But yeah, hope this was fun. I always have fun doing it. So hope to see you next time. Well, how fun was that? Trivia Tuesday. So check out my Facebook page at Bible Nerd. I post different things every day. I have themes for each day. Monday is motivational or quote Mondays. I'll put a bunch of quotes up. Tuesday is Trivia Tuesday. Wednesday is usually tied to music. So I'll post music videos or things that are really inspiring on Christian music and things like that. Thursday, I usually do a Thankful Thursday. So I have all these challenges and stuff throughout the day that's a lot of fun. And then Friday, I have a discussion or a topic that I'll bring up and just get some interaction, get some people talking back and forth. So it's really a lot of fun. Love where this is going. I love that you're a part of it. Please click subscribe, like, and comment. Let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. I just love going on this journey with you and can't wait to see where God takes us. So I hope you have a wonderful day and God bless.